Oh, it's 2 o'clock. Oh, Mr. Joe Berry, it's time.
Hey, Stu.
Hi. How are you? Good. Yeah. Yeah, it's my sister. Yeah, she's doing good though. God be the glory. Yeah, she's doing good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Amen. How are you? It's 2:01. It's time to go. Page me on course.
Page 128 for my fellow counselors. All right, good afternoon, everybody. To close out the day today, we have our budget hearing with the Department of Law. Corey Williams, Chair of Finance, joined by Counselors Hogan, Nave, and Caldwell, and Corporation Counsel. Would you mind introducing yourselves?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sue Katzoff, Corporation Counsel for the city.
Good afternoon. I'm Joe Barry, First Assistant Corporation Counsel for the city.
Thank you. Would you mind jump in very, very briefly? Tell us what we do, some of the things that have occurred in the past budget year that you want to highlight, and then we'll take a look at your budget for the upcoming year and have a little conversation.
Glad to do it.
Thank you.
So currently, the law department is staffed of 33 positions, of which we have 29 filled. We have 3 attorneys spots in various levels we are trying to attract candidates for, and 1 secretary position. So our current staff is made up of 20 attorneys and 12 staff people, paralegals, other assistants. This year alone, we have seen an increase in almost every aspect of what the law department does, because if you keep in mind, the law department represents every single human being that works for the city of Syracuse in every department. So we have an increased number of labor and employment arbitrations that we're working with HR on. We have an increased number of litigation matters that we are defending. It went from 86 to 120. On a positive note, we have had a reduction in the notice of claims, which are outside parties suing the city. They went from 247 down to 210. We've had an increased number in the number of nuisance abatement properties that we have been addressing successfully. We have implemented a program where we are reaching out sooner to properties so that they are negotiating with us so that they don't get their 3rd strike letter, which has been a positive change. The number of ordinances that Joe and his team have drafted have increased this year from 915 to currently we're at 975, but we are projecting that it will be even higher than that by the end of the year, given the number of various matters that are in the pipeline coming before you. The number of contracts that have been approved by the council that we have prepared have gone up from 300 to 305. The number of tax cert cases have increased from 19 to 26. The number of code enforcement cases we have commenced against property owners have increased from 34 to 50. I do believe that's a positive change. The number of judgments we have collected have increased from 275,000 to 300,000, and we're hoping that that goes even higher. Unfortunately, the number of FOIL cases or requests that we have received have increased exponentially from 2,081 to over 2,700 this year, which is an enormous undertaking and burden on the department, all the departments really. Having reviewed all of that, we have some things that we think are very positive outcomes for the law department this year. As you are well aware, we have revised our local tax act with the advent of the case from the Supreme Court indicating that we could no longer operate the way we were. So we revised our tax act so that we have now a clear path forward to continue seizing tax delinquent properties and getting them back to the tax rolls. The council has already approved well over 100 properties, and we are very grateful for that. We have commenced a number of actions against properties illegally selling cannabis, and we are currently working to identify new targets. There are plenty of them, and we are working with opposing counsel on those to enter into stipulations that then become signed by the court. We have been asked by NICOM, which is the New York Conference of Mayors, to appear at its upcoming retreat in order to sit on a panel to tell other jurisdictions the efforts we have made and how we are doing on our enforcement efforts. We also work very closely with New York State's Department of Taxation and Finance with respect to the illegal sale of cannabis and have a very good working relationship with them. We have also commenced approximately 5 actions against stores where we have identified them selling spike, and we have been successful in negotiating stipulations with most of those that then become orders of the court, so that in the event we find that they sell again, we have an enormous amount of leverage to ask for a contempt order to be issued by the courts. We also are looking to implement a program in the coming year that will provide a new avenue to address zombie properties, which are properties that are vacant throughout the city but still have mortgages on them. And we are hoping that in the coming year, we will be able to leverage those lenders in a way that we haven't been before to get them to implement the code violations and address those, bringing those properties up to code. We also, in the past year, adopted new tobacco legislation that allows us to limit the number of entities selling tobacco and tobacco-related products, as well as where they are located. And Codes is currently working on applications for tobacco licenses and identifying those that cannot operate. We are working on addressing delinquent landlords, those that are the most egregious in our communities, and trying to work different ways to leverage them to get them to comply or to sell their properties. And I guess the last, although not the least, is that we have worked tirelessly over the course of the last year to get rezone over the end zone and to identify some needed amendments that will be brought before the council in the coming months. So,
Did you get that landscaping issue all worked out there in rezone? I was just wondering.
yeah,
Rezone to the end zone.
rezone to the end zone.
So you talk a lot about both accomplishments and demand. You mentioned 20 attorneys and then 13, 14 professional staff. Where have your numbers been historically? I have not been around.
I think we are reaching historic highs in terms of positions filled. I think there is always a vacancy rate. I think that with the advent of the comp study and the increase in salaries for individuals working in my office has made a huge impact, both in terms of retention and attraction. So we are forever grateful to the council and the administration for undertaking that. And it has really allowed us to get out there and attract some new talent. So we are hoping that in this coming year, we can fill the 3 vacancies that we currently have. And we can use them. Everybody is working, if possible, at 110% capacity, so we would be grateful to have those.
Just for a comparison, at the beginning of the Walsh administration, we were starting with about 15 attorneys because we had lost several to the private sector.
FOIL. Tell me about FOIL. What's the causal nature of the demand, the increase?
So, I know I'm supposed to like FOIL. I'm supposed to like it because it provides transparency into government, which is a positive thing. I do think there's an abusive aspect of it, but historically, I think what has caused the demand is that a couple of years ago, there used to be a provision called 50A, and 50A protected police and law enforcement from having their records responsive to FOIL requests, so they were protected. 50A was repealed, I don't know the exact date, just prior to me getting here, so within the past 2.5 or 3 years. And as a result, you have people requesting records of police officers, some of them dating back to 1970. And so we are receiving requests from NICLU, from other organizations, asking for every single police disciplinary record from 1970 forward. Now, if we did not maintain those records, we would not have to produce them. Unfortunately, because, and SPD is not alone in this, because every single police agency throughout New York State always benefited from the protection, they maintained records. It just was easier than not maintaining them. And so if you have them, you are obligated to produce them. So it is causing an enormous backlog. And it's not just the large requests, it's not just the NICLUs of the world, but there are just several more people who are willing to come forward and request those types of reports, so.
Are those responded to by your attorneys or your professional staff? Combination, probably?
Combination. We are trying very hard. It used to be, before the repeal of 50A, it was always paralegal driven. So you had a paralegal overseeing another paralegal, and they would respond to the FOIL request, and it was not terribly difficult. It was relatively straightforward. With the advent of the repeal of 50A, you now have a situation where all of these records are subject to FOIL, but that doesn't mean you turn them over as they are. You have to review every single record to determine, is this responsive? If it's responsive, can it be withheld under one of these categories that require us to withhold them? If not, is there information in this report that has to be redacted? Was there a juvenile involved? Was it a sex crime? Was it sealed by the court? So nothing's easy. Every single one requires you to touch every page. And so it is quite burdensome on our staff, but we are trying to get back to a process where it is paralegal driven with attorneys identified as overseers. So if you get to a FOIL that, oh wow, this is really challenging, there's nuances here, I'm not sure, can I release this? You can go to the attorney to provide guidance, but otherwise we're trying to get to a point where we can make it more paralegal driven. You're welcome.
What is the procedure if a citizen wants a copy of a FOIL report? Who should they contact?
So if they want to file their own FOIL request, they can go online and they can see it on our website. They can call the office. They can stop in and get a form. But if they don't want to file their own, but they want to see prior FOILs that have been disclosed, our software will now show them some of the FOIL responses. It's a new software, so as it came into effect, as we release FOILs, they're on there, so you can go and see any. I can get you the date that became effective. I don't know the exact date in my head.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Sure.
So are you the one who always makes a determination what needs to be foiled? Because sometimes people call me up and they said that they're being told that they have to foil that. Is it the mayor's office or it's you?
It's us, really.
Okay, because the media sometimes will call all the city councilors and ask them and say, why are they asking us, is it always a legal situation where the city could suffer in some financial way, or?
It's not so much financial, it is more about being arbitrary and capricious. So
Okay, who's being arbitrary and capricious?
is the city. So in other words, if Joe Barry weren't assistant clerk counsel, but he was my best friend, and he came to me and said to me, hey, Sue, I really want to get some documents out of codes. I want to see how many violations there were on this house down the street from me. And I was like, okay, Joe, wink and a nod. I'll have somebody get you those. But you filed a FOIL request, and because of the number of FOIL requests I have, I say to you, we acknowledge receipt of your request. It'll be 3 months before we can get you those documents. That's unfair because Joe knows me. So we're trying very hard to funnel everything through FOIL, understanding there are times because of exigent circumstances where we may need to expedite a request if it is current, if there's some reason that we need to address it sooner. But for the most part, you come through the FOIL process and you get in line, and we get to you as quickly as we possibly can.
See, some of the stuff, it's all public record. So a lot of the stuff is just public record, right? I mean, isn't that's the whole crux of the matter, right? What is and what isn't? What's foilable and what isn't, right?
We're subject to a privacy exemption, so
Right.
Oh,
we
okay.
need to make sure, for instance, there's no date of birth in the document,
Social Security numbers.
Okay.
We redact certain.
I'm
information.
talking about policy stuff. A lot of times it's policy stuff, and I don't understand why would be, why
Everything is subject to FOIL. So getting
Everything.
documents, that is the method by which constituents request from public entities, municipalities, the state agencies, local agencies. FOIL is your mechanism by which you ask for copies of documents. And then you go through the analysis. Right, is this just a policy and it's written and it's on our website? Then just go to the website, you can look at it yourself, you don't even have to ask us. If it is something that's not readily available on our website, then you ask us for it, we get it from the appropriate department, whoever has it, we get it, we review it, okay, this can be released just as it is, or this contains information that is subject to an exemption, and then we redact it, and you get a piece of paper that you can read some of it, and some of it has black lines through it. Then it's a continuum, so it's release it in full or withhold it. Those are the two ends of the spectrum. You never get the document, or you get the document exactly as it exists, and then everything in between, depending on what the content of the document is.
For example, our communications to our attorney-client privilege, so they would not be released. And in terms of policy, some documents are internal, so internal memos are not subject to FOIL disclosure.
And did that answer your question?
No, but that's okay.
Excellent. And I've done a fine job here.
Hey, Counselor, but I think that if the FOIL come up with any of you guys' constituents, it's just direct them to law instead of say anything or talk about it, the procedure or anything.
No, I know what I think, yeah, I would do that. I mean, I'm just thinking mostly from the public. I worry about the public not understanding some of the stuff we do here. And the only instrument we have is the media, especially reputable members of the media who can actually like read and write. And so I worry about that, because it seems like sometimes when there's a foil or something's needed to be foiled, there's immediately like, what are they trying to hold? What are they trying to hide? That's what comes out, so.
If you're faced with a question like that, I would encourage you to call one of us and see if there's a way we can mitigate that perception, or
Yeah,
maybe
but then
the
you're going to tell me
information.
something I don't want to do.
Well, maybe the information is
Like
already
getting it off of you. right
in
now.
the public somehow, and I
So
can
it's better
direct you
to
to
be
it.
ignorant,
Well, okay, I agree, but one of the things I'll
I mean,
just,
not to belabor this, but one of the biggest problems we have, I believe, in government right now is there's so much false information out there. And there's people that push policies that are not good for the general public, in my opinion, because it's all like based on false information. And anytime we can get what we truly do in here as far as policy goes, I think that's really important out there.
well, and you might find, if you were to call one of us, that the
I'm
information.
talking just policy. I'm
No,
not
I know,
talking
right.
about
So the
personal information or anything like
information
that.
you may be looking for to share with the public may already be public in a way where I can direct you to it, and then you can just give it out.
See, I'll give
Or
you,
maybe-
the best example is what your department did in conjunction with the land bank, and thank you so much, when we addressed that issue that the Supreme Court's ruling, which would have jammed the city up so bad as far as like any kind of housing policies or any kind of progress. It would have been disastrous, because I served pre-land bank. And when there was no options for a neighborhood to stabilize itself if you had a bunch of abandoned delinquent houses. And so, but that whole process, I think the policy was that we got it out there and people sort of understood what we were doing, and they stood with us, because it could have went the other way too, the way it was presented. So that's all I got on that particular issue.
So you'll see in the budget, we have asked this year for one additional position, and that is an extra paralegal, in hopes of getting that position to plug them into the FOIL process, because that is an overwhelming stressor. And so having another paralegal will help with not only the backlog, but getting to a point where hopefully we don't have backlog.
Do you have any vacancies right now?
We have 4 vacancies. One is a secretary and 3 attorneys, but we are hoping to fill those attorneys' positions. And as Joe mentioned, we are at a relatively high capacity for what the law department usually has. So we're thrilled about that. We have a really good group of people. Just hired a young woman who relocated from New Jersey. So pleased with that. So we are getting a nice mix of people, some diversity in our office, and everybody is it's a great team, so I'm proud of them.
Advertise your positions, or you just?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, we advertise. So,
From a budget standpoint,
Who brought that over?
I know you're like about $1 million more maybe this year.
a lot of that is due to the increase in salary as a result of the comp study. Beyond that, it's,
See, there's some departments, because of their policies, that actually we derive directly revenue from. Like I just mentioned, the land bank. Putting those houses back on the tax rolls, that is the end result, ends up with us always doing way better. Especially just the threat, when the threat is actually we can carry it out, that people pay their taxes and stuff. So, and all of the other things you do as far as just saving us money and everything else. When you have I just sort of a housekeeping thing. So like, there's a water department issue. Do you back charge the water department on issues like that?
No.
Why not? They're water reserve fund. They're like different from the city budget.
The budget department, I think, can address that better, but my understanding is the water fund makes an annual contribution to the city general
Yeah, they
fund
do.
for all the services
Right.
they receive.
So
So I
that's
don't
part of
believe it's
that.
broken down by department.
And Sedco and SIDA, what do we do there? They pay for,
I don't believe CIDA any longer, CIDA used to historically pay the city for services from the law department, but they haven't done that in a number of years, is
Why
my
not?
understanding.
they should.
Because they have really good outside counsel.
Oh, so they're not using you at all? And like staff, like as a staff, like the,
They are not.
Same with Sedco. They have outside counsel.
They use Mackenzie Hughes, I believe.
Correct. Which is better from a conflict point of view. They're
Yeah, right.
separate corporations, so they really should be.
there's only 3 law firms in this whole city practically. They gotta have conflicts all the time. Okay. Just an attempt at being, me.
Okay, revenue, though, you mentioned our code enforcement revenue is up,
Right, a lot,
so,
a lot.
Our
And
unit
that's
there has been
because of
very successful.
DAA and all that, so, too.
and judgments that we seek.
What is the process? Because we've kept you busy, especially in my district. Business illegally opens up, and now you've had to go through the process. We had that with a couple businesses. How much time and money is spent when a business opens illegally, and then you have spent, and now there's a process where you have to shut them down, but you have to go through the law. Go into that, the process.
Well, the Division of Code Enforcement takes the initial steps by providing notice and the opportunity for a hearing, and our attorneys support them in whether or not there's a challenge if the business owner brings an Article 78. So we're there to back up the Division of Code Enforcement if their enforcement orders are challenged.
So so the law department has to defend the codes department and the city of Syracuse. When we had that property on Grant Boulevard, it took a process where this business just opened up illegally without any permits. So now you have to get involved. And I remember, because you said it would take we have to take a legal process.
Yes, they had to provide them a 15-day notice
Okay.
process, but fortunately, in that particular property, they complied, so we did not have to go to court to enforce that.
Right, they shut it down. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
everyone all good?
Yeah, we're good.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Second. Thank you very much.
Well, quick question. Both of you guys got the eyes, they got the eyes like deers, like, what do you want?